Gators Breakdown episode 89 is ready to go. Days later, and the performance from the Michigan game still stings in Gator Nation. But where do the Gators go from here? I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_STC. Co-host tonight, Joe Vizzi. You can find Joe on Twitter at JoeV_GatorsPod. And Bill Sykes. Find Bill on Twitter at RealBSykes, Sikes. Guys, all three of us are together for the first time after this game. Of course, we've exchanged messages and our thoughts for the last couple of days. It's still not pretty 2 days later, Joe.
Yeah, it's, I'm a little more calm today because we got a lot off our chest yesterday and yesterday's show. But, I'll let Bill fire off the ball today.
Yeah, for sure. Bill, I'll get your initial reaction, and then we'll go from there, man. But this is the first time the viewers can hear your side of the story, besides out there on Twitter and stuff.
Yeah, you remember when Walter White went into his fugue state on Breaking Bad and was naked in the grocery store? I almost went there, man.
You're gonna make me throw the Breaking Bad intro song in here now.
Yeah, you should, man. I'm telling you, my mind was not in a good place. I was confused. I was hearing voices. It just, it was not good.
Yeah, for sure. Before we get started, I just want to stress out there kind of a PSA of sorts right here, that if you're listening to this podcast in the state of Florida, please be prepared for Hurricane Irma as it's tracking towards Florida. We'll know more in the next couple of days. This hurricane is huge. Will bring major destruction if it hits the state. We all saw the devastation last week in Houston, and also last year with Hurricane Matthew. I saw Matthew's destruction firsthand as people lost their homes, businesses, and livelihood out there. So be safe out there. Pay attention to the next few days. Governor's already declared a state of emergency here in the state of Florida. So, to be already prep, to help prep for this major storm. So heed the warning, get prepared, be safe, take care of yourself and your families out there. But, we'll see what happens with Florida football this weekend. But that's the real life scenario out there.
Yes, this is a life-threatening event. This is no joke. David, you and I both went through Hurricane Matthew last year. I stayed for it. You stayed for it. You had to see the aftermath. But Hurricane Matthew, if I remember, was only a Category 2. Yeah. This is a Category 4, and they're anticipating that it's possible it could go to a 5. So all of our listeners down in the South Florida area, especially, and I'm in Central Florida, and I know you're in North Florida, this pretty much goes for the entire state. This is a life-threatening event. Football takes a backseat to this. So whatever we talk about, about our complaints and gripes about Florida football, our prayers and thoughts are with all of you, tonight as this storm gets closer. And we can only hope that it's ways out right now and that it moves away and offshore.
For sure. Joe, and you reached out to Scott Strickland, the athletic director of Florida, and he replied to a message you sent to him.
Yes, I did ask him if the game would be affected by the impending weather, and he did say that they continue to monitor it with University of Florida officials and the governor's office. So we'll see. I got a bunch of people responding to me about that, about saying, it's not supposed to hit till Sunday anyway or whatever, but that's not so much what it's about, about it directly affecting the game as far as weather goes. You got to think about first responders. You got to think about the television crews that got to get out of town on Sunday. There's just so much, especially it being a night game. That means that these guys are going to be breaking things down into Sunday morning, into Sunday afternoon. So you got to think about those people as well. If this storm, does take a path north straight over the state, which is one of the projections, it very well could affect the game. And I actually would not be surprised to see the game moved earlier, not canceled. I think it could move to the noontime slot on Saturday. That's also a possibility. So just be prepared. If you have tickets for the game on Saturday, just be prepared for that.
Hey, I also heard that Joe Oliva from LSU is now demanding that we move the game to Baton Rouge on October 7th.
Oh, low-hanging fruit, Bill, low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, I think he's actually canceling all their road trips.
Before we get in here, remember, you can find all your past Gators Breakdown episodes on SoundCloud. You can get Joe and I's initial thoughts on a Michigan game from yesterday if you want some more coverage of that. So you go out there and look for that, SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. Search on those sites or get the links by following Gators Breakdown on Twitter and on Facebook. Also, went on iTunes. Please rate and review the show. Let Gator Nation know what they're getting with Gators Breakdown. Bill, like I said, you didn't get to join us yesterday. Quickly, we'll break it down, even further. But your, initial thoughts on, just in general, to take the 60 minutes and compress it into, a couple thoughts here. What happened Saturday?
Oh, man. Well, first of all, before I get into all this, this is one game, and this needs to be said. As upset as we are, and as salty as I promised to be tonight, and I am, I'm gonna shoot straight. I'm gonna shoot from the hip and tell you what I really think. But we do have to wait and see how this season is defined for both Michigan and Florida going forward. And while this is a fair game to include as part of our evaluation of the program's trajectory, in combination with past years, it's not fair to make a summary judgment on the season yet. So that's what I'm going to try to do as we move forward tonight. That said, I think it's only fair to say, look, Michigan is an outstanding football team. They looked extremely well coached. They looked very talented. They flew around. They played good football. So I say props to them, and thank you to their fans who've dialogued with us this week and listened to the show. Also, there's some positive takeaways before I get all negative, and we'll talk about those going forward. So it wasn't 100% bad.
Just 99.8.
Yeah, I mean, that said, man, it's deja vu.
Yeah.
The problems of 2010 to 2016 just showed up here in September 2017, and that's a problem. It's a problem for Jim McElwain and his staff and the university. This program has a problem that's lingering, and it's starting to become a little bit more of a McElwain problem now rather than a later Meyer and full tenure Muschamp problem. And so now the question becomes, can this corner be turned, and is this a bad sign?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of why we labeled 2017 no excuse, because this is the McElwain team now. There's no more pointing fingers going to the past there. Jim McElwain did have his press conference today, a little more subdued, not as jovial as he can be in that setting most of the time. Felipe Franks was named starter versus Northern Colorado. McElwain said he is not taking over the play calling. Quote, "We are not doing that right now, but needs to make sure the guys that need to touch the ball touch the ball." So, look, there's really – guys, there was no way he was going to get rid of Doug Nussmeier this early in the season. Should it happen? Probably, but it's not going to happen after you've been preparing for months for a season this early in the season. Just not going to happen. Coaches just don't do that. Now, there was some coach speak and saying that this was only one game of the season and not panic. But that is coach speak. And to Bill's point, this is still a continuation of the last two seasons under this staff, and that was supposed to fix this offensive problem. And in year three, the issues still exist. Issues that make this offense look no better than when Jim McElwain took over. So I expected him to go that route, as coaches usually do, with some coach speak and defend his coaches. Some people point out there he has no problem throwing his players under the bus, but it kind of is what this is at this point. He was probably a little frustrated Saturday night, so I get that part of it. But where does it go from here? That's the question. So Joe, I know you were watching Matt McElwain's press conference and his demeanor going on that. What was your take?
Yeah, I was tweeting, throughout it, but it looked like McElwain was humbled a little bit. This is the first time where I've kind of seen him brought back down to earth. And I tweeted that out, and that could be a positive that one of Bill said that was taken away from this game on Saturday. Maybe he needed to take a step back and realize, hey, maybe I really do need to fix some things that I was stubborn to fixing, due to my ego or my pride, whatever it was before. But it was really good to see him say right off the bat, we're going to go back to Felipe. I think he needed to say that. I don't think he needed to say, oh, well, we'll see how practice goes this week and vice versa, because I think that would have sent a message of more, kind of being above everybody and looking down your nose at everybody and thinking that you know best. I thought his answers were very concise. I thought they were genuine. I thought when people asked him questions, I thought that for the most part, he didn't dance around anything. He answered them honestly. He was asked about the criticism he receives for losing to Michigan, Florida State, and Alabama in 3 out of his last 4 games. And he said it's fair. It's fair criticism. He accepts it because those are real teams. You're losing to the best of the best. And he accepted it and he admitted it. He accepted blame. I know, Bill's laughing right now and chuckling, but, this is the first time where I've actually seen McElwain kind of be humble, and we talked about this yesterday on the recap, David, about how McElwain's always been kind of condescending towards, the media members during his press conferences and kind of thinking that he knows best and the golly and the shucks and all. It's pretty neat, in kind of a sarcastic, snarky way. But today he was beat down. He was demoralized. And you could tell in his eyes that he was genuinely hurt inside for what happened on Saturday. And I really hope that this is going to light a fire under his rear end. I know a lot of people were disappointed that he said he wasn't going to fire Nussmeier or take the play calling away. I mean, I'm sorry, people, just relax. It's one game. I know people say it goes back 2 years, but what are you going to, I asked somebody, what were you going to fire Nussmeier after one season? I mean, come on. I know that I heard reports that McElwain's loyal to a fault, and that's the reason he won't fire Nussmeier. But I can promise you this, McElwain seems like the guy that he's not going to lose his job for somebody else. So I believe if Nussmeier continues the same in the next couple of games, especially against Tennessee in 2 weeks, I really think you can see a different McElwain probably. Maybe say something about the play calling being stripped of Nussmeier. Maybe Nussmeier is parted ways with. He's owed $1.1 million this year, and if he is fired, I believe he leaves with every penny of that. So, the university does have to think about monetary things. The fans don't have to think about that stuff, but the university certainly does. So these are all things that are collectively, added in. In time, we will tell. McElwain said, he used the line that a lot of people related to Muschamp. He said, I'll get it fixed. It's on me. We always joked about Muschamp saying that for years. So, you know what? If McElwain gets it fixed, then he was true to his word. If he doesn't, then we can say, you know what? Let's raise an eyebrow. Let's see how the rest of the season goes. And if it goes to a failure, I really think that this administration could start looking elsewhere. I mean, Scott Strickland did not hire Jim McElwain. We talked about that yesterday. He can make a clean break from Jim McElwain without any, ties or any sort of ill will or bad feelings because he wasn't his hire. It won't make Strickland look bad. So I think this is almost a job interview type year, Bill, and I think you would agree with me for McElwain. I think he has the next 11 games to basically prove himself, not only to a fan base, but to his team, to his university, and to the administration. And let's hope that what I believe to be a genuine press conference today proves to be true and proves to be fruitful.
Yeah, first of all, man, I wasn't laughing at you. I was getting trolled by one of my Georgia fan friends. He's tried to take my show by sending me things that make me laugh.
It's okay, Bill. You laugh at me all the time. It's all right. I've grown so accustomed to you making fun of me that I take it as gospel now.
Yeah, but no, man, I agree with what you said for the most part. I think, it's interesting what you said about McElwain's comments about getting it fixed. And, I'd like to point out that in 2005, after the LSU game, Urban Meyer stood at the podium crying, because, he was reeling in the wake of that defeat, and his, wide receiver option plays that he had brought from Utah had really proven ineffective based on the personnel they had there in SEC defenses, and he couldn't get it done. And yet they changed things up. They finished the season strong. The recruiting avalanche came, and the rest is history. And they won titles. So the question in my mind is this that? Is this McElwain's moment following one game into the third season where, as you say, he's humbled and he's going to make changes? Maybe. The problem is, his comments are that, okay, we've got a pad level problem and we're going to do 5 days a week in the cage instead of 2 or 3. You can't teach linemen into being dominant and teach football fundamentals in week 2. It was different in 2005 when he says, okay, we've got to change up schematics. And certainly that's a problem that we're going to talk about tonight. But if the problem is that they just can't win at the point of attack, then we might as well go home. That can't be it. And again, let me just say this. I don't want to just be unfair. The guy's standing at the podium and come up with the best answers he can when there are no good answers. They lost a game. They look bad. He's going to have to go back to the drawing board, and he might be able to get this fixed. And let's be honest, they may not play a team that good for a while, down the road here this season. But at the same time, we're going to get.
Bill, we didn't get no dead fish comments today. We got the real McElwain. Right. I believe he was as real as he's ever been.
Sure.
Today
he was laid bare today. It's not funny. Now, I didn't think it was ever funny. I don't care for that brand of humor. I mean, it just kind of rubs me the wrong way. But
it works if you win.
Right. It's fine.
And look good doing it.
And he kind of has that bravado and I'm going to say arrogance, but that's a lot of coaches have that. That's kind of their thing. And so I'm not knocking him for that. It just comes off a whole different way when things aren't going well. And when you look back over the past 2 years now, and we're in year 3, the things we've been talking about, functional offenses and no excuses, and you look at the keys of the game we laid out that we'll itemize here, right down to the letter, it's fail, 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 and fail in the field. And so that's not going to cut it. It's got to turn around, and it's got to turn around fast.
And I think maybe once, Bill, he saw it today. I think this was the culmination of his failures over the last, 2 years. So maybe this will be the turning point. Like you said, Bill, every coach has one. Didn't Nick Saban lose to a pretty terrible team his first year at Alabama?
Yeah, he did. But
he lost to ULM.
No, it just all.
But every coach has But don't forget, Saban had already won a national championship at that point. So let's not act like he was an amateur coach. This is Jim McElwain's first big gig, let alone not being a championship head coach. So maybe this is the turning point that he needed because he was humbled. I just, like I said, I think he went into that game thinking that Florida was going to win without 10 guys on the field, and we'll get to the suspensions later because that sounds a little deeper than we originally thought. But he went in there thinking that he was going to go in with a smile and a grin and win. And you played a real team on Saturday. You probably played the best defense you're going to face all year. And they got whooped front to back, taken to the woodshed. And I think McElwain, he doesn't really look like a crier, but he almost looked like he wanted to cry, Bill, today, like you said about Urban Meyer.
Yeah, let me just first of all, the Nick Saban comparison doesn't work for me. Nick Saban was 12-2 in his second year, 14-0 in his third, was recruiting excellent from the start. I mean, the problems that have beset the Florida program under Jim McElwain were just not there in Saban's early tenure. It's just, and that's kind of the problem here is what we're looking at now in the beginning of year 3. That record versus ranked teams is getting awful. He's still only beat 3 of them into his third year now. Recruiting has really taken off this summer, but it's been on very fragile ground. And, look, let's be honest here. The problems that we're talking about, recruiting, poor initial staff hires, personnel decisions, schematics, the things that we're discussing now, it's a discussion about the problems that almost all fans agree are things that McElwain has done or not done rather than what Muschamp did. And the farther we get into that, where the less talk is about the way Meyer left it, the way Muschamp leaves it, and the more of what McElwain does, if those problems are traced back to that, well, now you got to deal with that, and so there remains a plausible reason to suggest that, hey, this is still the hangover of those prior regimes, that, yeah, those 6 linemen, while they've been replaced, they need more time to mature, and you got some suspensions that maybe weren't McElwain's fault, and some of these other things. Yes, it's a plausible line of reasoning to say he can get this done. It's not his fault. He needs more time. But the clock is ticking. The clock is ticking, and he's got to show progress. And let's be honest, that was not a well-coached football team.
There you go. You said the P word, and that's the P word we've all looked for. And this whole season was built on progress. And we gave reasons why these first 2 years may not have worked on offense. Could have looked better, sure. But there were some excuses out there that you could throw out there for it not looking as good as it could these first 2 years. But we kind of, came together and said, it was this third year. These are his guys. There's no more excuses. And there's really no more excuses for looking that bad. Now, I'm sorry. I defended Doug Nussmeier as long as I could for these first 2 years. I did not expect what we saw Saturday at all. I didn't expect it from McElwain. I didn't expect it from Nussmeier. I didn't expect it from the preparation. I didn't expect it from the scheme coming in. I was just taken aback that nothing absolutely changed.
Yeah, and let's look at this statistically. Oh, go ahead, Joe. Sorry,
can we
Blake.
acknowledge the lack of leadership within the football team?
Oh,
these
yeah.
these are kids, but they're also adults. You know, these kids are old enough to vote. They could buy lottery tickets, smoke cigarettes. Some of them can drink alcohol. So I mean, these are adults. I mean, they could go to war. I mean, these are adults that also have to police themselves. And unfortunately, I feel like maybe some of those leaders, Marcus May, Jared Davis, Tease Tabor, Quincy Wilson, unfortunately feel those guys are in the NFL right now. And not a single player has stepped up to take that leadership role. And we expect guys like Jordan Scarlett, who's a junior this year, Antonio Callaway, who's a junior this year, guys like that to kind of step up and be the voice of reason and be the vocal leadership and be the guys to get the young guys and say, no, you're not going to take this card and sell the stuff that you bought on it when it shouldn't be done that way, because it's not only illegal, it's immoral. But unfortunately, those two guys were involved. So it's like we're the ones that you expect to kind of take your team and lead them to do the right thing are in fact the ones that are leading them in the wrong direction. Bill, when your ship's captainless, you're going to crash, or sink, or both. So I think that is a huge problem, and I think that was very evident on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can't speak to what's going on in the locker room as far as leaders. There could be 50 good leaders on that team, and you got just one group that's causing problems. But even then, it's a distraction for everybody else. And this could have been a demonstration of a hangover from that.
Yeah,
maybe
we undersold the suspensions. We undersold them, and that was my fault too.
Yeah, but let's be honest. If Scarlett and Callaway are out there, did they win that game? I don't think so.
No, I don't know, Bill. Scarlett could get those tough yards that those guys weren't. I want to know why Malik Davis got one carry for 8 yards and never saw the field again. I'm sorry. Now that we're talking about running backs, what in the ever-living – yeah.
Yeah, and look, we had a couple people ask, Manny Rodriguez at Daily Gator and Jim Irwin 6 wanted to talk about, Nussmeier. And look, if you can't get more carries from Malik Davis, who his one carry was 8 yards, which is your longest carry from scrimmage.
And he was a grab away from housing it, too.
Right, and if you can't get Massey more than 2 touches and
Tony doesn't touch the ball till 4 minutes left in the game.
Yeah, he's got 2 touches, and I see him in the first half. I think he was out there, and they decided to run behind him, on the perimeter, and he's been playing receiver for a week, whatever. I mean, if you can't get the ball to those guys in that situation, then I don't believe you're going to get the ball to Callaway. And that was a problem last year. They didn't get Callaway enough touches. The guy hasn't put up the numbers. I believe Scarlett probably comes out. I think he does have a lot of tough yards, maybe 60, 70 grinded out yards on 15 carries. But I just don't think they'll win that game either way. The lines were being blown off the ball. The blocking and tackling at the point of attack and the contact, the Oklahoma drill was just a failure. And I think that is coaching. Those guys, it's not like they have sisters of the weak and poor out here for offensive linemen and defensive linemen. There's some good athletes out there, some people that will be in the NFL, but due to some things we'll talk about going forward, I just think it wouldn't happen.
But Bill, I went back and watched the tape as well quite a bit today. That game seemed like it was a little bit closer than I originally thought. Eddie P missed a pretty big kick that he usually makes. That makes it a 26-20 game with 2 minutes left. And I think if you leave Felipe Franks in there or at least send him back out in the fourth quarter, I think Florida has a chance. I think putting in Malik Zaire for more than a couple series was the biggest mistake. I tweeted that out yesterday. Got a lot of attention. I said it on a recap yesterday. I think Jim McElwain's biggest mistake was not trusting to go back to Felipe Franks. I think he sealed the fate of the team with handing the ball and the keys basically to Zaire.
I think you're smoking dope.
Really? Because I'm pretty sure that most people would agree that Felipe Franks was the best quarterback that Florida put out there yesterday.
No, I would too. But to say the game is
Malik Zaire looked lost. Malik Zaire looked lost.
I'm not talking about Malik Zaire, and I think you were the one that predicted he would start this year. I think Franks was the best quarterback. I'm saying I don't think that game was close at all, and I think it was closer to being a 40-point loss than it was a victory.
I'm talking about specifically the score itself. I wasn't talking about the feel, for, how we felt it should have been. Because as easy as, 2 touchdowns have been returned for interceptions, Bill, we could say that, those could have been housed for touchdowns for Michigan, of course. You know, it's always football's a game of inches. We know that. It's tipped passes. It's a missed block, a missed tackle here and there, you know. So, of course, I'm speaking specifically on score. It was 26-17 with two and a half minutes left in the game. Florida had the ball. You know, Eddie Pinheiro could have made that field goal, made it 26-20. It would have been a one-score game. Things could have been different. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying, you know, it was only a 9-point game with 2.5 minutes left. The game was not out of hand, is what I was getting at.
How many
score-wise?
How many drives do you think from Florida's 20 it would have taken them to get 9 points in that second half? With
Malik Zaire, you're not going to get it. But my point is, I wonder if Franks was out there and they knew that they had the threat of the pass, because what Michigan did when Zaire was in there is basically put 8 guys in the box because they knew Malik Zaire couldn't throw a pass to save his life. So, you know, I think things would have been a little different if Franks was in the game. I could tell that Michigan's defense played different against Zaire. They blitzed a lot more. They put a lot more trust in their defensive backs to make one-on-one plays as opposed to Felipe Franks, because they know that Franks was making the tough throws. I mean, there's a couple throws that Franks dropped in there where the defensive backs dove and tipped passes and saved big plays from Florida getting big plays.
But
Bill?
Yeah, but I'll get into that. That's where I wanted to go next. I know I sent you guys this stuff. I don't think even though we like what Franks did, and even though it may have made a difference, he still only had 9 attempts. I don't even know if they would have trusted him to make those type of throws. Apparently not, only giving him 9 pass attempts. So it's just the whole trust issue.
Well, he bailed on a couple too, David. He bailed on a couple pass plays. Yeah. So he could have had a couple more.
I'm not convinced if Florida has 8 drives, they come up with 9 points from their own 20. It's not a game of a block or tackle. It's a game of –
I didn't say Florida would have won that game, Bill. I never said that. I said the score made it appear to be a little closer than it might have been. You know, do you get what I'm saying? I said that game was not completely out of hand. That game was not completely out of hand is what I'm saying. It wasn't like Michigan was up by 3 touchdowns with 2 minutes left. That's all I was saying. That's it.
Okay, man. I don't think
that's all I was saying.
I don't think it was close, and it could have been a lot worse. That's all I'm saying.
You're right. It could have been. And if Florida, you know, doesn't get the holding call, the late holding call as well, Mark Thompson houses it, and that's a different game too. So I mean, come on, Bill. I mean, we could if what's his name was thrown out for targeting in the first couple plays of the game, which he should have been, then that's a different game too, because Michigan loses with their best linebacker. So. I mean, we could all play, the game of semantics here. So that's all I'm saying.
As I'm fond of saying, if frogs had shotguns, there'd be no snakes. I mean,
and if my aunt had a pair, she'd be my uncle. So
I just don't see it. I think if you look at the film, and there's been a lot of debate over the offensive line and the play calling, and man, both lines, like the defensive line, held their own at times, and they were inconsistent. But there were times when Michigan's lines on both sides just had their way with Florida in the trenches. And there were so many plays I watched where I'm like, man, who is getting blocked here? Because you look in 4 or 5, even 6 guys just not sustaining blocks, not opening room, they're not getting to the second level, not cutting off penetration, just on roller skates.
Yeah, the offensive linemen falling over themselves because of the pressure Michigan was putting back on them.
It was as bad as I've ever seen. And I don't want to take away from Michigan, but one of the things I think with the problem here, what could have been done, and I hate doing this Monday morning quarterback schematically because we don't get to see the full picture of why certain decisions were made and things. Yeah. But I'm going to talk about the end result in a minute. But for now, one of the things that I would have liked to have seen is tempo. You're sitting here with Don Brown. He comes out. I was dead wrong. I thought he would come out in a 4-2-5 front and just let his line control, which I think they could have done, and wait for Franks to fall apart. Now
they went tempo with Zaire.
No, they did.
That was McElwain's point, and he couldn't do anything.
But I'm talking about I would have liked to see it up on the line, hurry up, no huddle. That's what I like. And I know that may not be installed. They maybe picked it up a little bit, but I would have liked to seen it from the beginning. It shouldn't have taken until the third quarter to adjust to the fact that they had 8 guys. I mean, not only in the box, they just had them coming. And what Don Brown did is he went a lot more multiple. He went with a lot of 3-man fronts, and he was daring Florida to beat them with quick strikes. And Florida never did. Now, they tried it a little bit with Zaire, but for the most part, there was just no good response in the first half. And, what you're allowing Don Brown to do at that point, when you're moseying up to the line, you're not adjusting, you're allowing him to just flop personnel in and out, show you different looks on every play to get set. And then the defense, they're coming. On the snap of the ball, they're firing off. They're coming at the lineman with a full head of steam. Florida's offensive line, on the other hand, is saying, okay, which one of these guys is coming at me and who do I block? So they're not the actor, they're the reactor. They're not the guy that's firing out low and angling at somebody. For the most part, they got their head on a swivel and they were popping up straight.
What did I say last week, Bill? You dictate, don't let them dictate you.
That's exactly right. And that's what I'm saying. Almost every key we laid out was a negative for Florida. Cutting off.
But don't you agree, Bill? Don't you agree that this was the perfect storm for a young quarterback and a lot of young players to kind of fall on the sword and fail? This was against an experienced defensive coordinator that's very savvy. He's been around, and he has some very, very savvy defensive players that are the anchors of his defense. Maurice Hurst was making plays that, NFL defensive tackles barely make. He looked like Ndamukong Suh when he played for the Lions out there. So we can all agree that, this was not a good scenario for Florida to be in. And I know, when was this game scheduled, David? Back in 2014?
Yeah,
14.
Yep.
14 this game was scheduled. So
Muschamp and Hoke.
Yes. These teams looked completely different then. And unfortunately, it just turned out that, both of these teams were maybe in different places of the season already for the first game, and in different talent disparities. So that's all I'm saying there too. I did say that yesterday as well. Look at the Washington and the Rutgers game that was the other night. When they actually scheduled that game in 2013 or 2012, Rutgers was pretty good. So, these are things that, I guess with scheduling games this far in advance, sometimes you get situations that may not be ideal for one team. I'm not making excuses. I think, Florida just got dominated from front to back. But, I'm just saying you got to take into account all these factors. Michigan has probably 3 or 4 guys on that defense right now that'll play in the NFL and probably be first-round draft picks in the next year or two. So that's all I'm pointing out.
Yeah, and that's fair, because I don't want to just make this a lopsided. I think there's legitimate reasoning and legitimate excuses here to explain why some of this is happening. It's just we need to also look at the other side and say, okay, let's say, yes, this is a perfect storm. Let's say it had nothing to do with the leadership in the locker room or leadership in the coach's office. These players getting suspended. It's a big distraction. Florida's replacing a lot. They're up against a very good defensive player and a very good defensive line with a young offensive line. Remember, I kept saying that. Everybody kept saying, oh, Bill, this is the best offensive line in the SEC. And I'm like, wait a minute, guys. Wait a minute, Cole Kubelik. Wait a minute. They're young. They're one of the youngest, if not the youngest offensive line Florida's had. So they're going to take their lumps. On the other hand, if we said, now we're going to put you in that situation and we're going to respond by not getting the ball to the playmakers, we're going to be slow to the line, we're not going to adjust the game plan. This is what happens. You can't just say, well, here's like a defensive mastermind in maybe a top 5, top 10 defense, and we're young and we have problems, so let's just do what we always do.
Yes.
You get 11 rushing yards out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I sent it to you guys. Y'all want to break down Frank's?
Yeah, I do want to get some stats at some point in the show, just kind of where Florida's offense is, but I can wait.
Yeah. All right. So
I want to talk about these suspensions real quick. I think we undersold these suspensions. I do. I think if it wasn't a distraction to the team, Bill, you'd mentioned that. I think Callaway and at least Scarlett could have provided a little bit of a spark offensively. And who knows? Callaway's known for making 1 or 2 big plays. He did it against Ole Miss. He did it against LSU. He did it against Tennessee. He's done it, in games before where he's had big plays down the field where he's reliable to, take somebody deep. One thing we could say about Callaway is Callaway has great hands, and he's a very crisp route runner. So, we know that he's got the speed and stuff, but I think, and I'm at fault for this as well. I for, the last couple weeks, I undersold these suspensions, but Bill, even on the defensive line depth with Kavanis Davis, who knows how much he would have played. So, maybe we really did undersell these suspensions. And also what McElwain said today was very interesting, Bill. And, we had talked about this in direct messaging over the last several weeks. This seems to be sort of an NCAA sanction, administration type issue, because Jim McElwain made a comment today, I don't know when they'll allow them to come back. It's not him. This has nothing to do with him or the coaching staff.
I think it has compliance issues written all over
it. I think this has
covering their butts here.
Exactly.
Just to make sure
Yep. They don't want to forfeit any wins in the future. Yep. Absolutely. Which scares me because this could drag out all season, guys. It really could.
I still don't know how much that it would have mattered, but you're right. I mean, Callaway, when it was announced he was suspended, my thing was if you're getting good quarterback play, it probably won't matter. If you're getting subpar quarterback play, that's when you're really missing because of what you said, Joe. The plays that he couldn't make,
Callaway was the only player in Florida history, David, that scored a kick return, a punt return, a rushing touchdown, a passing touchdown, and a receiving touchdown. Only player in Florida history. I mean, you got to be pretty special to be able to do all that.
Oh, I agree. I just can't get a stench of Saturday out of my. I just don't know. All right. So even though my big thing here was trust, and I know Bill spoke to it about what are they doing in the first half, up tempo, all that good stuff. That trust is the word for me here. I don't know if there was a lot of it there. The staff, to me, went into its shell of safe, conservative play calling, which, as we know, is very predictable for the Gators. Obvious runs on second down, and everyone watching in the game knew it was coming. Michigan sold out on it at times because Florida refuses to go away from the script. Some of those were Michigan overloading the box with 8 guys and Florida sticking with 7 guys to try and run it. And Michigan had the talent edge, the numbers and the talent edge, the numbers edge in those scenarios, and yet Florida's stuck with trying to out-physical Michigan, and I told y'all 50,000 times last week it wasn't going to work. So that Don Brown and that defensive line scared the bejesus out of me, and this offensive line I just didn't think was far enough yet, and it's exactly what happened. It was never going to happen. Does the staff not have checks for Franks to make in these scenarios? And it seems they just stuck with the original play call no matter what, if they were outmatched from the get-go. Another part of this is the offense is still the same sluggish, no urgency style of offense that's plagued it for years. Nothing on this offense looks easy. Even some of the good plays look clunky. So it's another sign, I don't know if they fully trust him or not, is the 9 pass attempts. Why did he not have more? It was clear before this game that running the ball into the teeth of Michigan was going to be pretty tough. And I spoke last week that I thought opening up with some passes and trying to back Michigan off a little bit and open up the run game after the fact, that may have been the plan. And Michael Wayne just for some reason thought they could run physically right at Michigan. So it's the 9 attempts from Franks when these 9 attempts were pretty good, and I'll break those down in a minute. But everything I just said, it still makes no sense. That's what Florida came out with and didn't adjust, even in game.
Yeah, man. Last week when we kind of previewed this show, and like I said, I didn't expect them to come after Florida this hard. With the pressure packages, because I kind of didn't think they'd have to. But when they did, having not expected that, that's when I said, we got to run right at them if they're in a 6-man front. And you do have to make the pay. And they were in a 3-3-5 at times, but for most of the game, they had 8 men in the box. At that point, you've got to get, like Chris Doring said, the rub routes going. You've got to make quick passing plays that put players in space. You put Franks in there, 3-step drops at him, or even a shotgun, and have him just throw it the blitz.
Yep.
Throw it the blitz. And at that point, you do have to air it out. Just go. If they're going to take the inside runs and the stretch runs away from you, you can't just keep running into a pile. I mean, your offensive linemen are being just tossed like rag dolls. I need a moment.
And part of it, I'll break down these 9 attempts that he had. It was at first I wasn't sure, were the receivers spread out? Were they trying to spread the Michigan defense out and then give Franks open lanes to throw in? The first drive, his first completion, it was a 4 wide receiver set. It was 2 split wide with Massey and Hammond, with Massey on the outside, Hammond in a slot, Cleveland and Powell on the left, close to the formation, plus a tight end. It was a straight drop back, and his perfect throw to Hammond down the sideline for 34 yards. The second drive we saw his next attempt. It was an incompletion, but it's 1st and 10, trips left, Powell motion from the slot closer to the formation. When the ball was snapped, Powell came across the formation. He was the first read after the fake toss to Pirine. Franks rolled out, nothing there with Powell, pressure in his face, threw the ball away. That's what he should have done. And there may have been another receiver open, but with the pressure in his face, there was nothing else to do with that play. Very next play, 2nd 10, it was completion. 2 wide receivers stacked to both sides, wide receiver screen to Cleveland. It was an easy throw, but Powell can't hold a block. And so instead of one defender, Cleveland has to beat. There's 2 defenders because Powell can't hold his block. So Cleveland only gains 2 yards. Next play was the 3rd and 8, and Franks was sacked, and there you go. And the next attempt came after Franks tripped himself on a 1st and 10 after Michigan's first touchdown. So this next attempted pass was 2 tight ends, 2 wide receiver set. They were trying to set up a deep play action on that play. So that's where Frank tripped himself. So I think they were trying to go deep. It just wasn't going to work. Next attempt was the next play. Almost. It was my bad. It was a wide receiver screen. It was complete to Jay Massey. Another easy 2-yard throw. Play almost had a chance, but Hagee can't keep Hurst engaged, and he chased it down. So going down to the 5th attempt here, it was later to the same drive, incomplete, 3rd and 9 from their own 37. A 3 wide receiver set, 2 to his left, Swain in the slot. A straight drop back, long corner route that was well covered to Freddie Swain. Barely overthrew it there, but he makes that. I mean, barely. So I think Franks. What we're seeing here is Franks is making the right reads, and that's where I really like what I saw from him going from there. After the block punt, it was his next attempt, but it was on 2nd 8. A lot of people thought they'd come out on 1st down, chuck it, change of possession, go first play, but no, didn't happen. So on 2nd 8, the Gators go trips bunch left and motion Lewis over. It was a completion. It was a short hitch to Powell, possibly a check down for 6 yards. Look, that was kind of, I think, what we should have seen more of. Frank's getting the ball out pretty fast. So attempt number 7 was a completion as well. 4:16 left in the first half. 1st and 10 from their own 15, a 3 wide receiver set. Michigan blitzes a linebacker that beats Taylor, but Franks gets it out. It was a go route to Cleveland, underthrown. Cleveland comes back, fights for the ball, 31-yard gain. Next attempt, his 8th attempt of the game. Later that drive, incompletion, but a great read and throw. It's 3rd and 13 from the zone 43. Franks got a good pocket when Michigan rushed 4. Makes a really nice throw to Freddie Swain in coverage. Coverage is great, but Swain made no attempt to get the ball. It didn't help his quarterback there. Franks maybe could have put more air on it, but that's kind of being really picky. And the last attempt was his only attempt of the second half. 1st and 10, they're on 25. Incomplete. It was a 2 receiver set, 2 tight end set, play action bootleg. Makes the right read on a corner route to Hammond while on the run. No pressure in his face. Makes another great throw on the run. Well covered, but the ball knocked away on the throw. So looking at that, I wanted to look at formations and see if they see how open they were giving Franks to operate. So my takeaway for some reason is they still didn't trust him. After all those, he made the right reads, made the right throws. This is the only credit I'll give Nussmeier in this game. When in examining these plays, these were good play calls. You just needed more of them, and that's part of the problem. They didn't call them. The run game wasn't working. Frank was making great reads and throws, yet they kept him under wraps. Didn't call more plays to get the playmakers involved. Tried to keep everything on schedule instead of taking risks. Played right into Michigan's hands. Some of those plays could have been more of the same plays that we just went over. Some of those plays could have been used to take advantage of Michigan's aggressiveness. I'd like to see 3-step drops, as you said, Bill, to beat the blitzes, see how he reacts to having to make quick reads. He did good given the play calls given to him. I sat here last week and kept throwing out how aggressive this defense was going to be, but Florida played right into it. No quick read, no blitz beaters were even attempted when Franks was behind center. Given the lack of help from the play calls, the lack of running game, the lack of an offensive line to help him, I thought Franks did about as well as he could. I'm excited to see more from him. Just let him do some more, and do the coaches trust him to do more?
I really hope they do, because, I said yesterday that Franks looked good, and he has the potential to be really good. Bill, I think Franks is the kind of quarterback that if you give him some time, I think he'll shred you to pieces. I think he's the kind of quarterback that could sit in the pocket, and he's so tall, he can see the whole field, he can scan the field, and he can pick people off. His arm is so strong that it's not going to take but a flick of a wrist to throw the ball 30, 40 yards down the field. So I really want to see Franks, with some time. And I think, with the upcoming defenses that Florida's going to be playing next week with Northern Colorado and then Tennessee's defense is in rough shape. They're letting Georgia Tech kind of have their way right now. It's 7-7, but Georgia Tech looks like they're about to go in and score. But I think Tennessee's defense isn't very good this year. David and I were talking about it earlier today, especially with the Derek Kirkland being out for the remainder of the season. I think, this Northern Colorado game coming up is just what Felipe Franks needs. I think Florida needs to score 50 points on Saturday. I think if Jim McElwain wins this game by anything less than 2 touchdowns, I think it's another travesty. I really do. We can go into Northern Colorado, but they're a pretty terrible team. They finished 6-5 last year in the Big Sky Conference. They were terrible. They played Colorado State last year and Eastern Washington were the best teams they played, I believe, and they lost big to both of them. So they just played College of Idaho, which is an NAIA school, and they won 41-10 or something like that this past weekend. But they're not very good. I think this is a team where Florida can pretty much have their way, do what they want, and this is a game where Franks gets his confidence back. Bill, I don't know if you agree, but I think this is a game where you could see him really shine, showcase his skills, kind of like in the spring game. This is kind of like a spring game for Florida. And then you got Tennessee at home the next week. The Swamp's going to be rocking for that game. David and I will be there. So I really think that this is a game that Florida really needs, and I think Franks really needs this game. And I think that, although the playbook's going to be vanilla, quote unquote, because they don't want to show too much to Tennessee for the week after, but I really think that this is the kind of game Florida needs to go out and win 50-6, 50-7, something like that.
Yeah, I was going to say 2 touchdowns is not enough for me. At least 4. I mean, if it's anything less than a 42-14 kind of game, this is a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to your point on Franks, yeah, I think Franks is the type of quarterback. He looks like he has potential, and he's got 1 game of experience ever at Florida, and it's just really hard to say. But I agree with both of you. He was putting the ball where it should have been, and he was making the right decisions for the most part. I mean, he kind of had some freak turnover kind of situations and trips. And
that fumble was a freak turnover, Bill. That fumble when he was stretching for the first down, that was a gift.
If McElwain benched him for ball security issues, I think it was incredibly dumb.
It was.
But at the same time, I kind of got the feeling that it was a desperation move by McElwain that had less to do with Franks himself and more to do with just trying to generate a spark. And look,
but why couldn't that spark have been given him more?
Yep.
No, I would.
Well, we talked about that, David. Bill agrees with me. Bill, I said the same thing yesterday.
Bill agrees. I'm just.
It was desperation. It was desperation. It reeked of desperation, and it reeked of fear. Bill, it did.
And the thing I think he was really looking at, I think he had resigned himself to the fact that the line was going to give no protection to its quarterback, and that Zaire being a little bit more mobile might have a chance to survive the game. I really think that's what it was. The problem is, and I do agree with you, by the way. To me, Franks is hands down the better passer at this point than Zaire, and I just don't like Zaire's vision. And I don't want to knock his performance too much either, because he had his hands full with that pass rush and the lack of a running game. And I thought he played admirably given the circumstances. But 2 plays stood out to me. One was the one I sent you guys earlier. There was a screen pass in the third quarter where they send Thompson out towards the left sideline. He's got the Great Wall of China in front of him. It just perfectly set up screen pass. And Zaire just doesn't see it. I mean, there's nobody over there.
And Thompson's even waving his arms like crazy.
He's waving at him. He's like, hey, throw me the ball. And Zaire's like, nah, man, nah, you're not open enough. And he's still out. He's like, no, seriously. And, he just launches it down.
The one time they could have a conversation.
Yeah. He launches it down the field. I think it was Cleveland and into coverage, and it goes incomplete. But it was a guaranteed touchdown, if Thompson didn't fumble, that is. But anyway, there was another play on the 4th and 3, like on the last stand or whatever. He threw to Powell, I think it was an out route. I can't remember, or hitch or something. And he just threw it too late. He just didn't see the guy. And, instead of throwing to the spot before the break, he throws it after he's, made the break and the DV's already closing in, and it never had a chance. So I think Franks has to be the guy. I don't really
going by what I said, Bill, do you think there's enough there the coaches should trust him with more?
Yeah, I do. And to be quite honest, I think the mobility that he showed, I don't see where Zaire's upside is on this team.
Boom.
I don't see
Goal line.
Yeah,
maybe. I don't even see it. I think.
Why not? He can move.
Because I think Franks can move. and he can throw. So why not let Franks run some of the zone reads and the read options and things and get both?
Yeah, I thought we would have saw more of that too. I mean, I know it's not going to be his forte, but there was one time he should have kept it on a keeper, and it was actually the Thompson play. If he didn't give that ball to Thompson, he could have run for the first down easily himself.
Yeah, and at this point, I'm telling the kid, hey, look, Franks, we want you in the pocket, but man, we've got to get something going here. Just moving forward, let's be honest, they need the spark and the momentum for the program more than anything else. It's worth taking the risk. He needs to run the ball a little bit.
I think it's just worth giving him more. I saw enough to give him more.
I think if Florida fans see Felipe Franks being committed to by the coaching staff, I think if Franks just plays pretty good this year, I think at least fans would give McElwain the benefit of the doubt, saying this is your quarterback. We've been waiting to see him for 2 years now, and his upside is really good. Even though this might be
progress,
kind of a exactly, this may be kind of I don't want to say a dud season, but I promise you the fans will think more highly of going 8-4, 9-3 with Felipe Franks than going 8-4, 9-3 with Malik Zaire and looking like a dumpster fire along the way. So, why not? And I think McElwain did the right thing today in the press conference by immediately saying, we're going back to Felipe. I think he knew it all along. David, I think McElwain even knew in his heart of hearts that it was a mistake to basically strip the game away from Felipe Franks. And like Bill said, I said it yesterday, it was a desperation move. I think the moment was too big for this coaching staff. And it's sad to say, but it was almost like they didn't belong. They didn't belong on the opposite sideline is Harbaugh.
And it's exactly what it looked like. I mean, and the sad state of affairs was, and I mentioned this yesterday, they came in at the same time, and it looks like one program's headed in one direction and another one is.
Well, let's pump the brakes on that, okay?
Stagnant. I'm not going to say downtrodden right now.
Yeah, because who knows what Michigan looks pretty good, but when Michigan, we don't know. Michigan could have an injury to one of their star. I mean, you just don't know. So I'm after one game, I'm not going to say Florida's in the toilet and Michigan's headed to the.
No. I'm not saying toilet. I'm saying stagnant. Stagnant right now.
Yeah, and again, we can't evaluate and make summary judgments on the season, but we can look at the trajectory of the programs. And as of right now, it looks like they're on different trajectories.
But I caution people because, like I said, Bill, that was the perfect storm for Florida to fail on Saturday, and it really was. And it's not taking away blame from the staff or from the players. I'm just saying, with Michigan's experience on the defensive line, Florida's lack of experience at pretty much almost all the positions, especially on defense, it just was a perfect storm. It really was. Jim Harbaugh's coaching the Super Bowl, guys. Jim McElwain, that was the biggest game he's ever coached in as a head coach. Can we just be honest about that?
No, I agree.
Jim Harbaugh coached in a Super Bowl, and he was one terrible Colin Kaepernick pass away from winning it.
I tend to think the SEC championship.
Yeah, the SEC championship games. I mean, it's on par with this.
That felt bigger than an SEC championship game, guys. You know what? Because Florida had a chance to win that game on Saturday. Florida had a 50% chance in the RPI, 49.5%. Florida had like a 10% chance to beat Alabama in both those SEC championship games. Those games were basically over before.
They still had a big feel to it, especially that first season. But
Florida had 2 losses going into the first one and had 3 losses going into the last one. So this game felt bigger to me.
But they got 0 wins going into this one. I mean, if they won the SEC championship, they're the SEC champions. They win this, they beat Michigan. Great,
But didn't this game kind of feel like a Super Bowl a little bit, especially at a pro stadium like Jerry World, the biggest?
I think we said it was a trendsetter for this season for McElwain, and we kind of said that. So it still can be. It still cannot be. Hopefully it's not. So hopefully they can go back and look at the film. Maybe they can look at themselves in the mirror and go from there, and maybe take some positives away from what they saw. Speaking of positives, Bill, I think you mentioned earlier that you saw a few, and if you could share with those and see, hopefully we'll see more positives after this.
The white helmets were nice. All right, next segment.
No, they weren't. And if you guys don't want to get rid of them by now, you know what? I'm gonna somebody started firedougnussmeyer.org. I'm gonna start firethewhitehelmets.org. Okay,
There we go.
And that's the
I'm
show,
over
everybody.
him. I'm over them. I'm over them. Guess what? You can't fight fate. I'm over it. I'm over it.
That was nice, Phil.
Every big game
was
in the
nice.
garbage, in the dumpster fire. That's
All
where
right.
those.
I was going to bring it up yesterday, and Joey and I were just completely mad. And I forgot about it. But
I really do have a couple
they never cease to amaze, those white helmets, ever.
All right, so here we go. All right, couple of good things. Michigan, let's see, is 113th in sacks allowed this week because Florida had 5, and that puts Florida tied for 5th nationally.
Oh, there we go.
The defense had its struggles, and I am very concerned moving forward. We're seeing kind of what I expected. We're seeing defensive tackles that are very inconsistent. Sometimes they're in the backfield, but then sometimes, like Taven Bryan gets turned. I saw some disruption from Kerry Clark and even from Daryl Slayton when he was in there. But I also saw both those players on roller skates, getting pushed around a little bit. Just inconsistency. The linebackers missing assignments, then making very sound tackles on other plays. Just kind of what you expect from a young defense. It is going to take a step back, but that's a sign that there's some real positive there. Getting heat off the edge and some heat from the interior of the line. Also, Florida got its first block punt in the McElwain era in that game, the first since 2013 when Muschamp was there, actually. They've had a good turnaround. Let me get my spreadsheet up here because you guys know I like my spreadsheets.
Spreadsheet?
Well, you know what? I actually don't have the special teams, do I? Oh, yes, I do, of course. All right, yeah, block kicks allowed were terrible in 2015 when I think they had like 7 allowed. It was just horrendous, historically bad, and they didn't block anything. 2016, they really solved that issue, only allowed 1 blocked kick last year, and they got 2 block kicks. So it showed improvement. And now to start off the year, they've got their first block punt. So that could show significant improvement in that era, in that area, and we could see more going forward. And then lastly, we saw a handful of those young defenders really shine. And let's be honest, when you got the pick 6 from Chris Henderson, and I thought Marco Wilson, even though he got beat a couple of times, I thought he held his own. There were times when, like I said, TJ Slayton looked good. So there's some good young defenders.
But you know what? Here's the thing. I remember Hargraves getting beat. I remember Tabor getting beat. It happens. Yeah. You're a DB. It's going to happen.
Yeah, and I would rather them get out there on that island and take the chances and be aggressive. And I saw some people take issue with Shannon's schematics and stuff and his game plan, and I didn't mind it too much.
The defense played good enough to win, Bill. It played good enough.
I thought so too. And they're going to miss tackles and miss assignments. I mean, if you've got a freshman corner and a freshman nickel and a freshman safety and second-year linebackers and freshman defensive tackle, it's going to happen. We told our listeners this is going to be a little bit of a rebuilding year on defense. Expect them to take a step back, but they were flying around and meeting people at the point of attack, and I was happy with it.
Jordan Sharon is a guy I want to single out on defense.
Yes.
I do. It was a question in the spring if he would be healthy enough to play in this first game. But he set the edge in the run game, and he was forcing the backfield at times in the passing game. So yeah, Sharon, he probably impressed me more. I didn't expect necessarily for him to come out and be I don't want to say dominant, but as good as he was, that kind of caught me by surprise.
Yeah, he was good. And some of those defensive ends are struggling with that. And I'm really not happy so far what I've seen of CeCe Jefferson's weight. Now, he's playing really well. He did really well statistically yesterday. It's not that I didn't like what I saw from him, from his effort or even his performance. He had 4 tackles. He had a sack, 2.5 tackles for loss. But there was just at times when people got their paws on him, they were able to turn him and move him or control him a little bit. And because I think he's only like 240 something now. And so he looks to me like more of a straight edge rusher than an every down end. I saw him one time, they actually did slide him inside and it didn't go so well. So I'm hoping he will stay out permanently. I saw some problem from some of the other young defensive ends setting the edge as well. It's just something they're going to have to continue to work on, or Florida's going to give up some running yards.
How about the penalties, Bill, or lack thereof? The discipline of the team. 5 penalties the entire game?
Yeah.
That was for a first game? For a first game, though, I remember Florida's first game last year. Florida had like 11 or 12 penalties.
Given the history, I know we're poo-poo because of the way the team played, but given the history, that is, if the game would have been a lot closer and they only had 5 penalties, we'd have been clapping our hands. But since it was a blowout, it kind of gets overlooked.
Yeah, Johnny Townsend averaged over 50 yards a punt, which was
God, that guy not winning the Ray Guy Award last year was a crime. That was an absolute crime. The only reason J.K. Scott won it is because who he plays for.
Yeah. All right, guys. Bill, you got anything else? Joe, you got anything else before? I just want to get your guys' thoughts on
Northern Colorado preview?
That's what I was about to say.
A win or a loss?
before we move to that, anything else?
Yeah, I got a couple things. A couple questions, if you don't mind, Dave, and then I got one statistical thing. Just to kind of make a case in point about why fans are concerned and why those are legitimate concerns. Florida last year was 113th in rushing offense. Well, now they're 125th last among FBS schools. Last in the entire country. I don't care who you're playing, that ain't going to cut it. Last year they were 79th in passing offense. Well, after this game, they're 90th. Last year in total offense, they were 116th. Now they're 117th. So it's easy to say, well, Michigan's really good and the suspensions and stuff. Well, those are some scarily consistent numbers in the wrong way. And that is a red flag of the highest order. So that's why fans are concerned. That's why I think fans should be concerned. And we need to see that change immediately. And it needs to be against quality opponents, not just Northern Colorado, not just Tennessee. When you get into the LSU, Georgia, Florida State, they need to be putting points on the board. It's got to change. I want to see a real offense, or else some questions need to be asked.
Well, they're already being asked.
I want to see offense against, like you said, Bill, the good defenses.
Yeah.
Kentucky, Vanderbilt, those are good defenses. LSU shut out BYU on Saturday. That was pretty embarrassing. But
BYU didn't cross the 50-yard line.
Yeah, I know. And Arden Key was out for LSU. That's even what's more crazy. So I hope he's out against Florida. No, I want to see Florida. Look, Florida played their best defense they're going to play this season. People say Florida State, LSU, whatever. But no, I'm sorry. Michigan's got 4 first-rounders on that defense, and that's a fact. Florida State has a good defense.
If not, definitely the best front seven they're going to face.
Absolutely. Not even a question. And the fact that those guys are just sophomores in the defensive backfield for Michigan, they got a really bright future in the next couple of years for that school.
You know what I'm a little concerned about, though? Can we say that about their offense? I know Florida's defense played pretty well, but they got pushed around a little bit at times, and they did eventually wear down. And that offensive line had to weigh with Florida's defensive line at times. Mm-hmm. And I'm a little concerned because I'm not convinced that was the greatest offense in the world.
No. But Wilton Spade is experienced. He's a savvy quarterback. You saw that he threw the 2 pick six. He threw the 2 pick sixes, Bill, and Harbaugh sat him down, let him cool down, and did what Frank should have did. McElwain should have did with Frank's, and he trusted him to go back in. And what did he do next? I think he threw a 40-yard pass to set up a touchdown run inside the 10-yard line, a laser. So, Wilton Spate was started for a reason. He's a savvy quarterback. He may not be, the next coming of Joe Montana, but he's not bad. He's pretty good. He's good enough. And Donovan Peoples-Jones, man, are you kidding me? That kid is a 5-star, and he's a 5-star for a reason. I mean, he is a stud, and he's got a bright future at Michigan. And, the Big Ten should be scared of him, because I really think that he could be the next Braylon Edwards type, guy for Michigan, that first-round pick.
Yeah, Bill, I go back to your point. I think they just scheme and they adjust so well. That's what
it's Harbaugh. He's the only coach that runs a true pro-style offense in college football. He literally runs a true pro-style offense, and a lot of defenses in college football, Bill and David, aren't used to seeing that yet. So they don't know how to.
I knew they were prepared. I knew they were prepared drive one when it was 3rd and long, and what was the little draw play, I believe, and popped off for 30, I think like near 30 yards or something. I was like, well, they know Florida's and Randy Shannon's tendency already in that situation, and they did it 2 or 3 more times on 3rd down. So it's just, I don't know talent-wise just yet if they're there. Joey, you spoke of Donovan Peoples-Jones, but with Spade, I still think can hold them back a little bit. But I tell you what, just scheme and being able to adjust to what's going on, that's what's going to keep that offense going.
Hey, do you mind a couple of those fan questions? Because we got some listeners.
We'll hit that, and then Northern Colorado, not much of a preview there. Florida's going to win, but yeah, go ahead.
2 of them I'll just make shout-outs because they actually, I think we already answered the questions. At Gator Nation 15 said he'd love to hear our thoughts on the offensive line, which I think we gave. Is Michigan's front 7 that good, or were we that bad? And I think we said that's a combination of the 2.
I still say that good.
Yeah, I think they were.
I do too.
But I think you also got a problem there.
Yeah.
Florida's offensive line, Bill, is going to look awfully good against, inferior defenses. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is, can they turn the corner? And I'm not convinced at this point. And that's something we'll have an ongoing discussion about throughout the season. And Prentice Davis at Texas Gator 27 wanted us to talk about the same thing. Now, here's one. And I'm going to combine these two. At UV Potential 15 says, can you talk about the subject of questioning Coach Mack's job if we lose to Tennessee? And Aaron Hodges says, I want an answer to my question tonight. Do you really think Coach Jim McElwain can get it done?
Well, on the subject of losing to Tennessee, Mac might want to start calling the U-Haul vans and the Atlas van lines if Florida drops that game to Tennessee in the Swamp, because things are not going to be pretty for him. I'm not saying he's going to get fired. Let's just pump the brakes on that. But the realtor might get a phone call, after that game just to inquire on the listing price. So I will say that about that.
I don't blame fans at all for feeling the way they do one way or the other. I don't. It's McElwain was brought here to fix the offense. Game 1, year 3, it's still not fixed, maybe even regress at a point. I don't blame fans at all. Most people know me as more of a wait and see how it kind of works out. I don't really like calling for people's heads. I'm leaning that way towards Nussmeier now. So fans out there, you were right. I was wrong. I'll put that out there about that. As for Mac in Tennessee, lose that game and the chirps start getting a lot louder. Once again, I won't blame anybody for feeling the way they do. But we'll let the season play out there. What was the second part, Bill?
Just how the Tennessee game plays into that, and also just can he get it done in general? Do you think he's going to make it?
Basically, is he the guy? Basically. Yeah.
Can't answer that with a straight face.
I can't. Yeah, I can say yeah, not feel comfortable, and I can say no and not feel comfortable.
Yeah. I mean, it's fair to say we don't know yet.
It is. Oh, it's definitely fair to say that.
And that's going to be my answer. That's not a cop out, but listen, if he loses to Tennessee, that's a problem, because now you're losing to yet another rival. You're starting to develop a losing record against your rivals, and it doesn't get easier from there. Because Kentucky and Vandy, you probably still beat them, but they're tough tests, and you still got.
I don't know, Bill. Do you go into Lexington?
Here we go. I was about to say.
I don't know.
It could snowball from there.
Besides Northern Colorado and UAB, and I said this before the season, but I think even more now, every game is winnable. Every game is losable.
Right, and that's my point. It's not like those games are losses, but if you have to question at that point, if you can't beat Tennessee at home this year, who can you beat on your schedule?
Yeah.
Besides UAB and maybe.
That's what I'm saying. Besides Northern Colorado and UAB, every game is winnable. Every game is losable.
Yeah, and I think the wheels would have to come off. I think the recruiting class would have to fall apart. I think some major things would have to happen for this to be the year that a change was made. And I still am pulling for Coach McElwain, and I think there's reasons to be optimistic. But he's just got to start showing some progress. And, maybe we get 6-7 games down the road and say, man, Michigan's just really freaking good. And Florida was really distracted by all the suspensions and everything else, but they've got their shit.
And we're really good too.
Yeah. And maybe you go and win the East, and who knows what happens in Atlanta. So,
and that's the worry. I wanted to be able to say that. I wanted to be able to say that after Michigan, that, you know what? Either way, two good teams just played a game. Yep. I can't say that right now.
Yeah, and I don't feel bad about saying I don't know yet.
I've been following the USC model today, guys, and yesterday. USC lost 56-10 to Alabama last year in the home opener. We were questioning whether Clay Helton was going to make it all season. He makes a quarterback change, and they find a gem and possibly a first pick in the NFL draft, and they end up winning the Rose Bowl last year. So let's see. Yes, let's see the next couple of games. And I will piggyback off of what you guys said. The only way Mac's out is if he has a losing season this year, a losing record.
Yeah, and I got one more really good question.
Okay, but I'll extend off of that and go to the next question. Just say there's a high-profile coach out there. I won't name names. But they initiate the phone call to Scott Strickland. If you want me, I'll come. And Florida has a losing record. That's where it gets dicey. I
think it's done. With a losing record this year?
Yeah, it sends a wrong message in a way to fire a coach. And don't get me wrong. I know the East is not what it has been.
We're talking about Zook, right?
Man, fireronzook.com. That was the first website. That was the first
Hey, I'm going to get rehireronzook.com.
Rehireronzook.com.
Hey, Mr. Zucker.
That means we'll beat Georgia.
But we're going to lose to Mississippi State when they.
That's right. Every year.
Yeah.
We're going to lose to a crap team that wins 2 games every year.
All right, Bill. What was the other one?
All right, here's the last one. Okay. At GatorFan65 says, Bill, I have a question for you and David and Joey on the show. What has changed since Will Grier was here in 2015 with the offense? Because what I saw of Franks on Saturday, at least to me, that he could be as good and probably better as our quarterback. That is, if he got better play calling.
That is true. What has changed? I mean, is the play calling that much different? I think the offensive line, it's hard to say, but Will Grier made that offensive line look better. Nobody else has made this offensive line look better yet. That's the offensive line should be better now. They've recruited better. Depth is there. But that is a very valid question. What has changed since then? Was Will Grier just that good? In certain situations, he was. Did things fall the right way? Yeah. I mean, that was a heck of a comeback against Tennessee, and the team was on fire versus Ole Miss. And that's the game we keep pointing to of what we want. So
and that's it. That's all you can point to, guys. Is the fourth quarter against Tennessee and the game against Ole Miss. Yeah. He looked terrible against Kentucky. He. Let's just come on, guys. Come on. Missouri, he didn't look good.
Kentucky didn't look good.
Yeah, I mean, come on. We're going off of a game and a quarter of Will Grier's career at Florida. Yes, we could have said what could have been, but you know what? That sounds like a desperate, lonely guy that lives in his basement and thinks about that one girl that was really hot that he took out. What could have been? Come on, guys. I mean, I'm so sick of talking about Will Grier. I'm over it. Just move on. Don't be the creepy ex-boyfriend that keeps looking at the photos of her on Facebook and wondering what she's doing now and who she's with and how late she's out at night. Come on, guys. The Franks is our guy right now. He's our girlfriend. Let's keep dating him. Let's take him out and court him and treat him right. And let's build a future with him.
It's kind of a Ray Finkel kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to
laces out, Dan. Laces out.
Yeah, and just to wrap that up, Will Grier, you're right. His first 3 games, he averaged 13 of 19 and 147 yards in those first 3 games. He only played 6 at Florida. He had 4 touchdowns in those first 3 games, 2 interceptions, and he did come on in games 4, 5, and 6, where he was averaged 22 of 34 for 254 yards. He had 6 touchdowns and 1 interception. But like you said, he picked up 60-something yards on that last throw against Tennessee in that last quarter. And, had a big game against Ole Miss, and that was the only time they went over 30 points. And they were the 54th ranked defense in the country. So I just don't think it's even fair to call that anything more than
besides the Ole Miss game, it's pretty much the same.
It's undeterminable whether or not that was really a thing going on in McElwain's offense other than that one game. It's just hard to say.
Don't get me wrong. That Ole Miss team was good. It was a very good team. But that's really about it.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for answering those questions, guys.
Yeah, that was some good questions there. So it is interesting. It is interesting to look at. Quick preview. I don't really know what to preview, honestly. I mean, I think we know what Florida's going to try and do. I think they're going to try and establish Franks, get him in a rhythm, get the playmakers the ball like we didn't do against Michigan. I think you'll see Tony, Massey, guys get some touches. If McElwain's true to his word, I think that was something that really – it's weird, caught him by surprise as well, but you're the head coach. That shouldn't catch you by surprise. Your playmaker's not getting the ball. But I think that's what we'll see. Maybe he'll also just try and lean on this offensive line and maybe get some confidence instilled in them. I don't know what this game really tells us about Florida at all unless it's a close game and the team is just still not focused.
Here's one thing to look for, man. If you see 3rd and short for the Florida Gators, they better go out there and convert, and I want to see their offensive line get pushed. That's what I'm looking for, because if they don't win by 40, I don't even want to talk about it.
Yeah. Bill, Florida shouldn't even allow Northern Colorado to cross the 50-yard line, okay? Northern Colorado is probably one of the worst, FCS teams that Florida's probably faced over the last couple of years. I mean, I went back and kind of looked at them. I mean, they were 6th in the Big Sky country last year, and Big Sky conference last year. I mean, that's pretty terrible. That's not really a great conference. So I will say this, Northern Colorado's offense is okay. They do put up points, but their defense is not good, okay? Let Florida should have no problem putting up 50 or 60 on them. And you know what, David and Bill? I think this is a game where Mac's going to come out and basically just want to run up the score. I wouldn't be surprised if Florida put up 20 points, but I also wouldn't be surprised if Florida put up 60 points against this team. So, this game means nothing. I think all this is a confidence builder going forward, which Florida needs right now. I think this is kind of a get your head on right type game, and I think this is the perfect game for Florida kind of licking their wounds after Saturday. So I expect Florida to win comfortably. I'm saying 48-6 final.
Yeah, if they don't score,
I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah. I mean, depending on how the game goes, because things can happen to lower the score and shorten the game. If Florida's just turning out yards in the ground game, but if they don't put up minimum 35 points, minimum, then we're going to have a different discussion next week.
Yeah, even if it's 5 rushing touchdowns. Right. I get what you're saying. Yeah, no. and this, both lines of scrimmage, offense and defense, should just completely just come out and dominate. Pass protection, run blocking, sacks. Not letting the run get to you. This honestly should just be both lines of scrimmage just dominating for 60 minutes.
It is. This is a spring practice or a spring game, in my opinion. That's all it is. I think Felipe Franks facing the second team Florida defense is probably better than what UNC is going to field, on Saturday night. So
yeah. All right. Anything else, guys?
No, that's it, man.
Georgia Tech is beating Tennessee right now, so that's pretty freaking awesome.
So. Second half just started. So
and they're driving, too.
We'll get to watch that. Guys, head over to 24/7 Sports, of course. Thomas Goldcamp and those guys over there doing some nice wrap-ups. And thanks to those guys for letting us post our podcast there and sharing all that. So all the board members over there listen to this. Thank you so much for sharing it. And thanks to Thomas, Blake, and Luke for doing what they do to help us out as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks to all our listeners, man. Thank you. We appreciate you. We're nothing without you. We love the comments, the criticism, the attention we get. We love it all from you. We thank you every day for all the questions that you send in, and like I said, the viewers, the listeners all over the country. We love you all.
For sure. Hey, and by the way, Kaylee had a friend, my wife. She was her friend was in Texas for the game in Dallas, and ran into somebody. I don't know any much more about the conversation, but got onto the conversation about our podcast. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's good stuff, man.
All right. So for Joe, you can find Joe on Twitter at JoeV_GatorsPod. For Bill, you can find Bill on Twitter at RealBSykes. I'm Dave Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. Thanks for listening to this episode.
Stay safe.
Oh, yeah. Stay safe.
Stay safe, guys.
To this episode of Gators Breakdown.